Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Character Dive, a show where we analyze characters from various sources of media. Let's go! I'm obsessed with Final Fantasy VII. Not sure how that happened, but I'm just gonna roll with it. Now I've taken the time to look at all the characters and realized how interesting many of them are. By that, I mean wild and unhinged. We got a weird episode this time round. But I should warn you, there are major spoilers to not only the original Final Fantasy VII, but also Advent Children, Crisis Core, Dirge of Cerberus, and the Final Fantasy VII Remake. And potentially Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. We'll see where this goes. Anyways, with that being said, grab a drink, kick back, and enjoy. Our first stop is in Wall Market. Don Corneo, the big boss of Wall Market. Corneo is quite the character. He's a tricky, sleazy, slimy guy. So what's the deal with Mr. Corneo? What he's got going on is a prostitution ring, bringing in women and treating them like a disposable commodity. Tifa gets tied up in this mess, and Cloud and Aerith have to go rescue her. When the three of them reunite, the big man makes his first appearance. Now we get a better demonstration of his character in the remake. Watch how he licks his lips when he sizes them up. This dude is thirsty. Although I can't blame him, he's got a good taste in women. Sort of. I mean, he picks Cloud out of all three of them. How did he fall for Cloud's disguise anyways? I mean, at first glance I can understand, but he felt his body, heard his voice, but still fell for it? He's clearly surprised at the end when he finds out that Cloud's a man. I guess you could say his mind was clouded in the moment.
Nailed it, I know, thank you. Moving on.
But let's get back to that dungeon for a second. Let's take a look at the environment. Look at all these torture devices. And there's a camera set up. Somebody's got some interesting tastes in entertainment. And that's where he brought Tifa? It's kinda obvious what he was going to do to her. I don't think any woman would want to be in that situation. I mean, you could see the discomfort in Tifa while Corneo is sizing her up. Even as a guy, I feel creeped out by this dude. I mean, look at how he acts while he's being intimate with Cloud. He's not too crazy, at least in comparison to the rest of the characters we're going to talk about. Which is what I thought until I remembered that scene when he tried to drop Elena and Yuffie to their deaths. Can't exactly remember why off the top of my head, but he's still considered a mad lad. Now then, we about to get funky. Let's talk about the Shinra Corporation. These guys are bad news. Let's start with the head of the corporation, President Shinra. While he has beef with the group Avalanche, who's trying to put a stop to him, he thought of a clever idea to take them all out at once, by destroying an entire sector of the slums of Midgar. For those who haven't played Final Fantasy VII, here's some quick context. The city of Midgar is divided into two halves. You have the upper half, which is the main city, and the lower half, which is the slums. Think of the upper half of the city as a large pizza that shadows over the slums. It's divided into 8 sectors, or 8 slices, as you may say. President Shinra dropped one of those sectors on top of the slums, that being Sector 7. Think of the amount of people he killed by doing that. This would include people on the upper half of Midgar as well. What's truly haunting is that there was no warning of this either. All the civilians were taken by surprise. In his mind, this was logical because he wanted to catch Avalanche off guard. It must take a lot of desensitization to make a choice like that. What makes things worse is he's not the only crazy one working at that company. The people who work under President Shinra are just as crazy. Which one are we gonna start with? I'll start with Scarlet. My gosh, this woman is evil! Let's start with that incident in Coral Town. Forget about the build-up. Let's get straight to the point. While Barrett's trying to rescue Dyne from falling to his death, this woman orders the Shinra soldiers to shoot off both their arms. She enjoys the idea of seeing people get tortured. She implies this when Professor Hojo suggests the idea of psychologically torturing Aerith. We're gonna get to Hojo in a minute, so hang tight. Hold up, let me say that in Vincent's voice. We're gonna get to you, Hojo. Just you wait. Anyways, back to Scarlet. Let's talk about that scene between her and Tifa. She wanted to have Tifa executed while broadcasting it on television. Let's take a look at this scene for a minute. We have Tifa strapped to a chair while this gas starts filling up in the room. The player has to follow the button prompts in order to free her. Not gonna lie, the first time I played this part in the game, I was struggling with the button prompts. I felt a little scared for her. But after she's free, we get one of the most satisfying moments in the entire game. We get a slapping fight between Tifa and Scarlet. Alright, it's time for Hojo. This guy is responsible for the suffering of so many characters in this franchise. Let's start off with the events of Crisis Core. After Cloud and Zack have their encounter with Sephiroth, the two are then apprehended for experimentation for the Genova project. This led to Cloud getting Mako poisoning. Of course, Hojo wouldn't be pleased seeing his test subjects escape. This led to Zack being assassinated by the Shinra troops, and Cloud having the bitter memory of his friend dying in his arms. Speaking of the Genova project, let's take a step back to even earlier events in the timeline. A scientist by the name of Lucretia was being protected by one of the Turks, that being Vincent. Love was beginning to blossom between the two. Unfortunately, Hojo interfered and took Lucretia for himself. Lucretia then had a child with Hojo, that being Sephiroth. While Sephiroth was still in his mother's womb, Hojo used him as part of the Genova project. At the same time, he used Vincent in a separate project. Lucretia soon realized that she was making a mistake. Let's take a moment to analyze this for a moment. Hojo took Vincent's girl, impregnated her, then used Vincent as part of an experiment, then used the child that he impregnated Lucretia with as part of an experiment. A scene that sent chills down my spine is when Lucretia begs Hojo to stop experimenting on her son.
Give it back! Give my son back!
People like to clown on Dirge Siberius for being the black sheep of the series, but the voice acting in that game is pretty top-notch. Hojo's pretty insane. But it doesn't stop there. No, we only just touched the tip of the iceberg. It gets a lot worse. Within the events of the main entry in the series, he tries to experiment on Aerith. Now, what he planned on doing with Aerith varies depending on whether you go by the original timeline or the remake timeline. In the original, he wanted to create a new species by breeding Aerith with Red 13. For context, Aerith is the last of the Cetra, the ancestral beings of the planet. While Red 13 is a cat, dog, thing, something, I don't know what he is.
Lab rat dog.
The point is he was gonna force them to breed with each other. Dude was gonna force bestiality. My gosh. But I will argue that what he does in the remake is slightly worse. During one of the Shinra Company's conference meetings, Hojo explains that he wanted to breed Aerith with S-Class and G-Class soldiers. According to Hojo, in order to successfully do this, he would need to psychologically torture her to break her spirit. While Aerith is held captive in one of the specimen tanks, Hojo drops subtle hints that experimenting on Aerith's mother is what led her to her death. This man deadass tells her that right to her face in the creepiest and most heartless way possible. The way he squirms like a snake while breathing on the glass, glaring at Aerith. You could feel the discomfort Aerith is feeling. As soon as he walks off, she breaks her composure. What makes things worse is that his teammates find it amusing. Look at Palmer giggling like a dork about it. Of course he finds it funny, but you want to know what I find funny? The fact that you get hit by a truck later on in the game. I can't wait to watch that in Rebirth. I don't really have much to say about Palmer, and I've pretty much said everything I need to say about Hojo. The only members we have left is Heidegger and Reeve, and both of them are pretty normal, at least in terms of what they represent. Well, that's it for the Shinra Company. Let's talk about the other characters. Now, I've already done a video on Sephitoth, but I still want to talk about him though because there's a lot of details that I had missed. Like when he comes face to face with Genova, who he assumed was his mother. Why did he take off her head? I mean, I get it would be difficult to carry her and his sword at the same time, but, I mean, how does that help anything? You burn down the entire village of Nibelheim, you kill Tifa's father, you beat up Zack, you try stabbing Tifa, you find Genova, and then you just take the head off and casually walk out with it? What exactly was he going to do afterwards anyways? All of that aside, he has an interesting relationship with Cloud. This man will go to the far ends of the world, and other worlds, just to find Cloud. He'll even jump through different video games, whether it be Kingdom Hearts or Super Smash Bros. He just can't get enough of Cloud. Something must have awakened in him when Cloud threw him into the live stream. Another thing that I should have spoken more about in that video is when he controls Cloud's mind. The fact that he takes enjoyment in seeing Cloud suffer like that shows that he has a bit of psychopathic character traits. Maybe these psychopathic characteristics were passed down to him from his father. He never really met Hojo, so I guess it was passed down through his genes. It's funny how everything always circles back to Hojo. Forget about Genova and Sephiroth, he's the real villain of Final Fantasy VII. Speaking of Hojo being his father, if he hadn't intervened with Lucretia and Vincent's relationship, that would open the door to Vincent being Sephiroth's father. I wonder how the story would have gone if that were the case. On a final note, I might have to do a part 2 on the Sephiroth video because I haven't finished playing Ever Crisis, and there's a lot of details on him in that game. Not all Madlads are bad guys. Some Madlads are good guys. Or girl, I should say. Take Yuffie for an example. Now hear me out on this. Let's say you're out on one of your treasure hunting sprees. You see a spiky-haired guy with a big-ass sword, a Mr. T looking dude who has a machine gun arm, a weird mysterious dog creature with a flaming tail, a badass martial artist, and a woman who has magical powers. Ask yourself, would you have the balls to try to rob them? Especially after the shit that they went through? I rest my case. I've got one more character I want to talk about in this video, and that's my man Zack. Now this guy is fearless. He'll dive right into the face of danger to achieve his goals. But there's one thing that he does that truly amazed me. After escaping the Shinra mansion with Cloud, Zack makes plans to return to Midgar, something he had promised Aerith earlier during the events of Crisis Core. The Shinra mansion is in Nibelheim. If you look at the map of Final Fantasy VII, we can see that Nibelheim is quite a distance away from Midgar. Zack traveled all the way from Nibelheim to Midgar, trying to keep Cloud safe and to keep his promise to Aerith the entire way. Sort of. I mean, Midgar was right there in the distance, but he got gunned down by the soldiers of Shinra. If that doesn't say Mad Lad, then I don't know what does. Well, that about wraps everything up. This was a pretty long one. Who do you think is the craziest Final Fantasy VII character? Is there anybody that I missed? Feel free to drop it into the comments. And as usual, have yourself a wonderful day.